I looked at the cabbie, and he looked back at me. And we just got locked in a staring contest. Finally, I pressed the red button and it ejected him right out of the vehicle.
That's my favorite ad for Bitcoin.
The ejection from the vehicle? Or two men locking eyes?
Isn't it part of the same one? We might be talking about different ad campaigns.
They're one and the same, and separate. How does someone do it? Bitcoin. You can also send your Bitcoin to me whenever you want. Mike8timesbitcoinwallet.com. Welcome again.
Yes, welcome to another Banter Banter, the most others of Banter Banter that ever bantered.
This is that next episode in our succession of episodes. I hope you enjoy this new episode, released on day.
Unless you're a mad chap and you do something like start at the top, which would be the most recent by default, and then just start listening to it backwards, then it's sort of like Pulp Fiction, where it's like, how did they get to this topic? I don't care, this podcast isn't very good anyway. Except it is.
Except we would tell you how we got to that topic by prefacing the episode with what drove us into the topic as you listen backwards. It's like you get a precursor before you listen.
Miss Daisy, that's what's got us here.
We're basically Narutoing this thing. You're going to get a little preview of what the episode's about, then you're going to watch the episode, and then you're going to get a recap of what the episode was and a preview of the next episode, which will give you a preview of the next episode, as well as recap the previous episode before you get to the episode.
Don't forget about the commercial break, where we're going to recap what we recapped 5 minutes before commercials in a black and white flashback sequence.
If you didn't get it, we're gonna beat you over the head with it, and then we're gonna shove it down your throat, and then we might try to bend you over and shove it up your bum. Naruto, plot structure.
1,000 years of pain.
But really, welcome to another episode of Banter Banter, here at the corner of nostalgia and reality.
Same place, same time.
I'm one of your same time, same place time hosts, Mike.
And I am a host because I thought I would be a ghost, but it turns out those are two different things. Manny.
Good thing you have the most body parts compared to a ghost.
Yes, at least 3.
Let me drag my chair to the corner and sit down.
Oh, is that what that loud metallic screeching was?
That's exactly what that obnoxious noise was. It was not a vehicle running into another vehicle. Do not mind that fire. That dumpster was there and burning well before we sat down here. Also, that's not my Chevrolet.
I mean, I did add a little bit to it, but why waste good fire?
Well, I was planning on turning this podcast around, but what we'll do is get into this episode's topic, which is gonna be a scorcher. Last episode, Manny, you brought up some social myths and arguments used in U.S. culture, and we dug into a little bit of that. You made me think of something that I also hear somewhat frequently around these parts, and it's a myth, and it bugs me. Climate change. People say it doesn't exist, but you know what? I look around right now, I look out my window, I look at my electric bill, and you know what I say? It's real and it's bad, and I don't like this heat. And you know what? Stop ignoring climate change, or I'm gonna have to turn this podcast around, because we might be dead from the heat.
You know, you said myth of climate change, and I thought you were about to admit you were a climate denier. That's a quick way for me to hang up. No, I'm kidding.
If the planet could just flip itself like a coin appropriately, the other side would get all of the heat and we wouldn't have to worry about our climate changing. The other side of the coin would get it.
Or if we did like Killface in Frisky Dingo, which is the precursor to Archer by Studio, and we just build an Annihilatrix, which is just a giant rocket, and push the Earth a few inches away from the sun to broaden its orbit, then we would solve global warming and we could run for president.
I don't know if I want to run for president.
It's okay, that season also ends with Killface realizing that because he's not a born U.S. citizen, he can't be president.
Ah, defeated. Hoisted by his own petard, one might say. And that's how I feel here in Texas. I feel like I'm being hoisted by my own petard that is sweaty from all of the gosh darn heat.
Closer and closer to the sun, one day at a time.
We've been setting records here in this state since the beginning of the year. New high temperature records, basically on a weekly basis. Now, I don't know too much about the temperatures because I'm not a whiz kid that learned astronomy and meteorology, but I do know when it's cold, but it's not as cold as it needs to be, that's a bad thing. And when it gets warm where it's supposed to be extra cold and stuff melts, that's a bad thing. And this is messing up all the temperatures around. We're having more dangerous hurricanes, more dangerous tornadoes. Storms are just generically more dangerous. I feel like I've heard more weather notices about hail this year than I have in several years combined in the past. And I've been living in this state for a hot minute.
My favorite part is how our off-the-rails privatized energy grid keeps finding ways to basically put out a warning saying, don't use your HVAC because we poorly prepared this grid for years and probably at least a few of you are going to suffer ill effects and even death from our poor planning and refusal to invest money in improving this. At around this time of year, they always have advisories saying, oh, you should use peak hours and not use your AC during those peak hours, something, auto thermostat, something complete. In the spirit of the great state of Texas, it was hard to say that, but the great state of Texas, I think we should make and fly a banner like the one at the Alamo, except instead of a cannon, have an AC unit on it that reads, come and take it.
My money, that is. 'Cause that's what you're doing.
You're here to tell us when we can and can't use our AC. And granted, yes, there's a certain point where it becomes a luxury, but there's also increasingly in these times a certain point where it's just a human right to have proper climate control.
It's wild that they think they can get away with it. But let's get into some other pieces as we grind our gears about the heat of Texas, the lack of our electric agency who has projected numbers of kilowatt hour usage and still can't seem to appropriately accommodate for that. And let's talk about something else that is heat related. Manny, as I recall in some of our off-microphone conversations, you went through Texas public education, much like myself. So I'd like to ask, from your public education, what do you remember being told is the hottest location in the U.S. as well as across the whole planet?
Ooh, all right. First, I was only subject to the Texas education system up till 3rd grade. Then I came back for college.
You dodged a partial bullet.
But now to answer your question, Death Valley, Arizona.
All right, that's the U.S. Is that also for the globe?
The Sahara Desert.
I would agree. My original education made me think of both of those locations. And so I had to do a little digging and actually search the internet. Good thing I didn't have to scour too hard because, God bless, it is sweltering in this computer room. Hold on a moment. Oh, that's right. Oh, that's gonna help cool me off. A cool beer in these top temperatures. To start, I'm gonna give us a quick rundown of the top hottest places on Earth. I will struggle to pronounce the names of some of these towns and cities. I do apologize in advance. Number 10, Jeddah in Saudi Arabia, which has an average temperature of 52 degrees Celsius. That is 125.6 Fahrenheit, just to help us Americans. Number 9, Mexicali in Mexico, also hovering at a 52 degrees Celsius average. Al Jazeera border gate in the UAE, which bolsters a 52.1 degrees Celsius temperature on average.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Oh, these are not averages. These are their max temperatures. I do apologize. That temperature was reached in 2002 in July. Number 7, Turbat in Pakistan at 53.7 degrees Celsius.
Woo!
It's 128.7 Fahrenheit. Number 6 is Basra in Iraq at 53.9 degrees Celsius. Ooh, it's just slowly getting up there into temperatures that make me burn. Number 5 is Mitraba in Kuwait at 53.9 Celsius as well. Tirat Tzvi in Israel at 54 degrees Celsius. Avaz in Iran at 54 as well. Number 2, Kabylie in Tunisia at 55 degrees Celsius. That's a pretty big jump. That is 131 Fahrenheit. And top of the list.
That's
right, America coming through with 1 on the board. Number 1, which I think would be fitting for America to shout from the rooftops, but I don't know if this is a good thing to be shouting about. Furnace Creek, Death Valley, at 56.7 Celsius, 134 Fahrenheit. Damn, I can't even imagine that temperature.
We're number 1. We're number 1. This isn't a good thing.
Sometimes being number 1 is not a win. This is mostly bad. I don't like being in hot places. Manny, I'm sure you don't like being in hot places, but here we are in Texas. And I will regale you with a short tale of a time that I experienced some extreme heat. I definitely do not want it back ever again. Went to hang out with some friends at Texas Tech for one of their opening games, and it was 119, no breeze, no clouds.
Wow.
Whew, that was rough, man. No thank you. I decreed never panhandle again for myself.
Could you feel the heat rising through your shoes? Were you wearing shoes?
I was wearing shoes. I couldn't feel the heat rising from my shoes because my shoes were actually in the shade, because everybody was in the stands, and so the humans in front of me were shielding my lower torso from the heat. But dry ice might have been the only thing to save me. It was an experience I would never wish upon a fellow enemy.
I remember once as a child, maybe somewhere around 4th or 5th grade, going on my way with my family to California for vacation. We had to make a stop over in Phoenix, Arizona, and that was the first time I ever felt that feeling where it is so hot out that any occurrence of a breeze is for once not welcome, because it just blows in the even hotter air.
Yes, I fully understand that misery.
Yeah, where every gust of wind is a punishment.
You thought wind would make you feel good. No, this is punishment. You are being punished for living in the heat. It feels like I'm unintentionally being punished by the climate change that is happening, causing my area to have much higher extreme summer temperatures, thus ruining my ecosystem that is very dependent on the rain. Last I read, our area is still in a 10-plus year drought that is sapping everything around us. And that's pretty wild, because we are not very far away from the hottest city in the United States, which is Yuma, Arizona.
Yuma!
Their record high at the time of writing this article, which the website does not have a solid thing. It just says hottest cities in the world 2024. But it lists that the record high is 124 degrees Fahrenheit, And it says, while the heat is dry, it's absolutely oppressive. Manny, would you agree from your memory of the experience?
Yes, absolutely. The Arizona climate, I'm sure it breeds a specific type of person.
It has to, especially when the city only receives approximately 10 inches of rain every year. There's no way I'm going to have a lush front yard. Not that I would try to have a lush front yard. That sounds like a waste of water.
Right, you wouldn't be able to have any level of out in the open water.
It would evaporate in mere moments, I assume, at that temperature. Their record high is 124. If that's just their high, I can guarantee most of their summer is sitting around 110 to 120 as an average temp. Yeah, there's no way water's going to be able to survive out there.
You think that's why most of it is underground water?
It's got to hide, just like snakes in a desert. And that part of the United States is a desert and is part of what ends up being the region that is the hottest region in the United States, which we already mentioned. It was the Death Valley area. It's not too far away from Yuma, it's just a bit north, but Death Valley is below sea level, which helps it get that extreme heat. So not only is it the hottest region in the United States, it's the hottest location on the planet.
I wonder how the thermodynamics for that work. And I wonder how much hotter it can get eventually, especially with the totally real climate change that, fuck you, it's still happening. That at this point, with the temperature, I forgot what the limit was, but the previous, we're not going to let it get past this temperature and we're going to stop using fossil fuels limit that we keep breaking past, moving them goalposts. You got to wonder if eventually we'll get deserts that just glass themselves.
Let's please hope we do not get to that extreme. Glass doesn't have a specific melting point, as it gradually transitions from a hard, brittle state to a molten state. This happens between 1400 and 1600 degrees Celsius, which is 2552 to 2912 Fahrenheit. If you'd like that in Kelvin, it is 12.
Can I get it in Hobbs?
That is Kelvin ball. We were earlier complaining about electricity to run our air conditioning. And earlier this year, I came across an article that was kind of interesting. It was a little bit of a clickbait ad, but I think they did a good job pulling me in. The world's hottest city has become unlivable with highs of 52 degrees Celsius. Even the streets have aircon. Screeching tires, me sticking my head out of the car, going, hold up, what?
What the dog doing?
Y'all got air-conditioned streets? I want to know how y'all got air-conditioned streets, because I would definitely do much more walking on the streets if they were air-conditioned. I'll get my steps in. I'll get my 10,000. Not on 52-degree temps, but give me some AC on the road, and yes, please, and thank you. For a little quick context, it is Kuwait City, and its weather station recently registered 54 degrees Celsius, the third highest temperature in the world, and that was back in 2016. This doesn't give me any information on how they air condition the roads, but guys, we're America and we didn't figure out how to air condition a road first. I'm disappointed in our education system. I'm also not shocked in it. Manny, what would you pay to have air-conditioned roads?
I'm okay with giving up the flying cars if we can have air-conditioned roads.
I accept this trade-off. Please, make it so. Not you, Manny. I mean, scientists. America, let's fix this shit. Air-conditioned roads for everyone. Unless you're in the north and you probably want heated roads.
Man, that's a good point.
I think this is a perfect moment for me to flip the script. Because if you think about it, if we are experiencing extreme heat, what are people at the poles experiencing? Aren't they also experiencing drastic temperature changes, which would incur some places to have extremely cold temperatures that are out of the norm?
That's why the better term for it is climate change rather than global warming. Although global warming, they do mean the entire globe's average temperature.
Yes, the statement global warming is a correct depiction of what's happening because the average temperature of our globe is increasing. But what we are seeing more consistently is the climate change, which are the drastic temperature and weather conditions that accompany the increase in the generic temperature of the globe, i.e., the ice caps are melting a little bit quicker, making water that is not salty enter the oceans, which can interrupt flows that are created over millions of years. But let's not get into the thick of it.
Wait. Actually, I've got a couple things to add to that. There stands to be a chance that it may also harbor bacteria and microorganisms that have basically remained in cryostasis. The kind of stuff that we don't know what it'll do to any current living form if it's let out to breed.
Manny, I do have a small dark comment to say, and it is, hey, European colonists, I think it's time for your smallpox and cholera and other diseases on blankets to come back and kill you.
Heck, it could be stuff older than that. It could be stuff we've never categorized before.
Before we get murdered by whatever germs come from the melting poles or the temperatures get so scorching hot that
The melting poles of friendship.
that we turn into the guys from Indiana Jones and the Last Crusade, where they get the Ark and they all melt.
Although I'm kind of good with melting Nazis.
That's also acceptable.
Melting Nazis is okay.
Manny, if you could send some Nazis to the coldest place on Earth, what place would you send them to?
Siberia.
You know, that's not a bad statement for where to send them.
The Antarctic.
So you'd send them to Antarctica or Siberia, one of those two?
It would be an experiment. We'd send them to one and the others to the others, and then figure out who has the best time surviving in ultra cold.
I think you made two great suggestions, because as I look at the coldest places on Earth, the coldest city is, I will definitely not get that right, it's in Russia, Yakutsk. It is in the Arctic Circle. For those that don't quite know, the Arctic Circle is the 66th
parallel,
and everything above it is considered inside the Arctic Circle. The city is located... it's not even in it. I lied to you guys. It is about 280 miles south of the Arctic Circle, but it's pretty darn close.
So a day trip if you leave early.
Their annual average temperature, that's summer and winter included, -8 Celsius, which is 17.6 Fahrenheit. That's the average. Which means it doesn't get very hot, or it's so cold that it really cancels out the heat you get in the summer.
I wonder if you could do that cool trick where you take boiling water and you fling it up in the air, and before you get scalded by boiling water, it just becomes powdery snow mist.
I bet you could on their lowest recorded temperature, which was -64.4 Celsius, 83.9 Fahrenheit. That's flipping cold, man. -84 degrees Fahrenheit. Whew, that's intense. So that's the coldest place to live, unless you're a scientist and you ended up in Antarctica. There are two stations in Antarctica that bolster the coldest records as the number 2 and number 3 coldest places on Earth. That is the Vostok Station in Antarctica at number 2 and the Amundsen Scott Station at number 3. With the coldest place/region being the Eastern Antarctic Plateau at -94 degrees Celsius. And penguins hang out in that. Let's just put this into perspective. these penguins don't have any clothes and they live there. Just a little reminder.
Ooh. At that point, the concept of cold storage for your food is just set it in a box outside that the wildlife can't get into.
Yeah. Do you have any additional thoughts on the extreme heat that our planet is being subjected to, or the extreme cold that we have?
I think education is key in these sorts of matters. I think we are far past the time where we can mitigate the kind of climate change that's going to happen to us. Cold and heat aside, just the massive amount of weather events. But at this point, our largest challenge is just getting everybody to listen to the data points. I understand that's a whole episode in and of itself that we may or may not have talked about when we did the environmentalist episodes. Get informed, folks. I get it. There's a lot of misinformation, but at a certain point, that amount of calls for attention can't just be a government psyop.
I totally agree. Just some education. Get out there. Read the data. Listen to scientists that have had other people double check and triple check their work. Because if they don't want you to check your work, how can we prove you're doing it right? And I gotta trust somebody that wants everybody else to check their work. Just take that food for thought, and while you're digesting it, please take a moment and rate us. Share us with a friend, have them subscribe, and then you subscribe. Help a brother out.
Don't forget to keep taking care of yourself. Wear a mask if you're feeling a bit under the weather. It'll definitely help keep you from touching a lot of your face, but keep it out of your eyes too. If you have to, though, just make sure your hands are clean.
I know it doesn't feel like it, but it is allergy season. It's just being sneaky. So get those shots, get those boosters, pick up any of those vaccines that you haven't crossed off your list, like yellow fever.
Ooh, there's so many to pull off of there, but yeah. And if nothing else, just be sure to not be outside any time between the months of March and October, because that's equivalent to being on fire.
Click that tweet button on X to get at us at Banter_cast.
You can find me through my link tree that'll be posted in the episode description.
You can find me at Mike8time, the number 8, on X.
This season's art was provided to us by @PepperTrupa, also on X.
The opening and closing music for this season is Dancin by Luke Bergs. You can find additional information in the show notes.